If I told you the only thing standing between you and your greatest success is you, what would you do? Would you accept it? Or would you fight it? You are both the obstacle and the breakthrough. Today, we're not playing games. We're identifying the two real enemies in your path, not vague fears or false ceilings, your ego and your blind spots. Get ready to demolish them. You think the things holding you back are out there: lack of money, lack of connections, lack of opportunities. That's the illusion. The truth is far sharper and far harder to swallow. The real barriers aren't outside of you, they're inside of you. They're invisible, powerful, and destructive, and if you don't unmask them, they'll run your entire life while you keep blaming circumstances. The first barrier is your ego, that constant whisper in your head that says, "I already know this, I'm right, I'm good enough." It protects you from feeling weak, but in reality, it keeps you weak. Ego is like armor that you wear to look strong, but it prevents you from actually moving forward. It makes you defend your mistakes instead of learning from them. It makes you reject feedback instead of seeking it. And worst of all, it makes you blind to the truth that could actually change your life if you had the humility to face it. Now, think about how ego shows up in your decisions. How many times have you ignored advice because it came from someone younger, less experienced, or simply because it didn't fit the way you saw yourself? That wasn't logic, that was ego. How many times did you shut down a conversation because you didn't want to admit you were wrong? That wasn't strength, that was ego. Every time ego wins, you lose. You lose growth. You lose opportunities. You lose progress. The cost is massive, but because ego blinds you, you don't even see the bill until it's too late. The second barrier is your blind spots. These are the truths you literally cannot see. Just like a car has blind spots that can hide an entire truck, your mind has blind spots that hide entire realities. You believe what you see is the whole picture, but it never is. Your perspective is limited. Your experiences are limited, and your brain is wired to filter information, which means you miss more than you notice. That's dangerous, because in those blind spots hide the mistakes that derail your decisions, the opportunities you don't recognize, and the risks that catch you off guard. Blind spots are even trickier than ego because they don't feel like a problem. At least with ego, you can catch yourself being defensive. With blind spots, you think you're being perfectly rational while missing half the picture. That's why they're so dangerous. They keep you convinced you're right, even as reality proves you wrong. So how do you unmask these barriers? It starts with brutal honesty. You have to accept that your view of reality is incomplete. You have to accept that you can't see the whole picture on your own. That's not weakness, it's design. You weren't built to see it all. That's why you need other people. You need to surround yourself with those who think differently, those who challenge you, those who spot what you can't. It's uncomfortable, it hurts the ego, but that pain is the price of growth. The next move is radical open-mindedness. That means you don't just tolerate disagreement. You hunt for it, you welcome it, you use it as fuel. When someone pushes back, you don't shut them down. You lean in, you ask, what do they see that I don't? What truth is hiding in their perspective? Most people avoid this because it feels threatening. But the irony is, this is where breakthroughs happen. The fastest way to collapse your blind spots is to listen to the people who see what you can't. Finally, you have to engineer systems to keep ego and blind spots in check. Don't rely on willpower, it's not enough. Create feedback loops. Compare your outcomes to your goals. Ask yourself, did I get the result I wanted? If not, where did ego interfere? Where did blind spots trip me up? Build processes that make feedback automatic. That way you're not just reacting, you're learning, adapting, and improving every single cycle. Unmasking the real barriers isn't easy. It's a war against yourself. It demands humility, courage, and discipline. But here's the reward. Once you see your ego and your blind spots for what they are, they lose their power, they stop controlling you, and that's when you become unstoppable. That's when the game changes, because the truth is simple. Nothing out there is stronger than the barriers inside of you, and nothing is more powerful than the moment you rip off the mask, confront them head on and refuse to let them rule your future. That's the moment you stop being held back. That's the moment you break through ego as the enemy of truth. It's the voice inside you that convinces you you're always right, even when you're wrong. It tells you that you already know the answer, so why bother listening? It makes you defensive when someone points out your flaws instead of curious. It blinds you, it deceives you, and it traps you. Ego feels like strength, but in reality, it's weakness dressed in armor. Think about it. How many times have you been in a conversation where someone gave you feedback and, instead of really listening, your mind instantly started defending? You started explaining yourself, justifying your actions, making excuses. You weren't absorbing truth. You were protecting your ego. That moment right there is the loss, because in your need to be right, you gave up your chance to get better. Ego is obsessed with image. It wants you to look good rather than be good. It wants you to appear smart rather than actually learn. It wants to win the argument, even if it loses the lesson. And here's the brutal truth. Success doesn't care how you look. Reality doesn't bend to your feelings. Reality doesn't care about your pride. It rewards truth, not ego. And the person who can align with truth the fastest wins. The danger with ego is that it doesn't just block truth, it attacks it. When someone challenges your perspective, ego interprets it as an attack on your identity. It makes you feel threatened, so instead of asking, "Is there something here I don't see?" you dig in deeper. You double down on the very thinking that's limiting you. That's why so many people stay stuck. They don't lack intelligence. They lack the humility to silence their ego long enough to learn. Ego thrives on certainty. It loves the feeling of being right, but certainty is the enemy of growth. The moment you decide you've got it all figured out is the moment you stop evolving. The most successful people aren't the ones who think they know it all. They're the ones who treat every situation as a classroom. They're the ones who ask questions even when they could give answers. They're the ones who lean into discomfort instead of running from it. Now, understand this. Ego isn't something you kill once and never see again. It's always there. It's wired into your survival system. You'll feel it flare up in arguments, in competition, in moments where you feel judged. The difference is whether you let it run the show or you train yourself to rise above it. When you feel yourself getting defensive, that's the signal. That's the alarm bell. Instead of shutting down the feedback, you have to lean in. Instead of saying, "I already know," you ask, "What am I missing?" That shift right there, that's how you win. The hardest part about all of this is that ego feels good in the moment. It feels powerful to shut someone down. It feels satisfying to defend your position. It feels safe to avoid criticism, but it's an illusion, because every time ego wins, you lose access to truth, and truth is the only thing that gives you long-term power. Reality is the ultimate scoreboard, and ego doesn't care about reality. Ego only cares about appearances. That's why people who cling to ego eventually fall behind. They've been busy protecting their pride, while others were busy adapting to reality. So how do you beat ego? You don't destroy it. You manage it. You build habits that keep you grounded. You surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to challenge you. You ask for feedback, and you actually mean it. You remind yourself that being wrong is not failure, it's progress. Every time you discover you were wrong, you've just traded a false belief for a true one. That's a win. The key is to value truth more than pride. To make truth the goal, not looking smart. To measure progress by what you've learned, not how often you were right. That requires discipline. It requires training yourself to pause when you feel defensive, to breathe, to listen, to ask, "Could there be a truth here that my ego doesn't want me to see?" If you can do that consistently, ego loses its grip. And when ego loses, you win, because the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares about reality. Align yourself with reality, and you'll always come out ahead. Ignore it, and no matter how good you look on the outside, you'll be falling behind on the inside. At the end of the day, ego is the enemy of truth. But the moment you decide that truth matters more than protecting your pride, you step into a different game. A game where learning never stops, where growth never stalls, and where success becomes a byproduct of constantly getting closer to reality. That's how you outgrow the limits that ego has been building around you your whole life. That's how you unlock the freedom to see things as they are, not as your ego wishes them to be. And that's when you stop playing small and start playing for real. Blind spots are hidden quicksands. You don't see them, you don't feel them, but they're there, waiting for the exact moment you step too far. And when you do, they pull you under before you even realize what happened. That's how dangerous blind spots are. They're not the mistakes you know about. They're the truths you can't even see. Every person carries blind spots. You do, I do, the smartest minds in the world do. The problem isn't having them. The problem is denying they exist. Because when you deny them, they own you. They control your decisions from the shadows. You think you're being rational, logical, calculated. In reality, you're operating with half the picture. And the half you're missing could be the half that costs you everything. Picture yourself driving a car. You check the mirrors, you glance ahead, you feel confident the road is clear. Then out of nowhere, a truck barrels into your lane. You never saw it. Why? Because it was in your blind spot. Your life can work the same way. You think you see the full landscape of choices, risks, and opportunities. But your mind filters, distorts, and skips over information without you even noticing. That's how blind spots wreck careers, businesses, relationships, by hiding reality until it's too late. The tricky part is that blind spots feel safe. They don't announce themselves, they don't send warning signs, they sit quietly, convincing you that your perspective is complete. That's the danger. Because the moment you believe your view is the whole truth, you've already stepped into the quicksand. You've already limited yourself to what you know, while reality holds so much more that you can't see. So the question is, how do you avoid sinking? The first move is humility. You have to admit that your vision is incomplete. You don't see it all. You can't see it all. And that's not weakness. It's the design of being human. The second move is feedback. You need others to hold a mirror to your thinking. People who see differently, who think differently, who aren't afraid to challenge you. They become your radar, showing you what you're missing. Without that, you're flying blind. Most people resist feedback because it's uncomfortable. No one likes hearing that they're wrong or that they're missing something obvious. But here's the truth, that discomfort is the price of clarity. Every time someone exposes a blind spot, they're handing you a rope to pull yourself out of the quicks, and if you ignore it, you sink deeper. If you grab it, you escape and move forward stronger. Another way to deal with blind spots is to test your assumptions. Don't just accept your first thought as truth. Challenge it. Ask, what if the opposite were true? What evidence am I ignoring? What would someone else see that I don't? The discipline of questioning yourself is what keeps you from being swallowed whole by your own certainty. The most successful people aren't the ones with the fewest blind spots. They're the ones who have built systems to catch them. They triangulate. They compare perspectives. They actively seek out disagreement because they know that's where hidden truths live. They're less worried about being right and more obsessed with seeing reality as it is. That's why they grow faster, adapt quicker, and survive longer than everyone else. Blind spots aren't just intellectual, they're emotional. You might avoid certain truths because they hurt, because they threaten your identity, because they force you to change, but ignoring them doesn't erase them. It only makes the fall harder when reality eventually catches up. Facing them now, as painful as it may be, is always better than pretending they don't exist. So here's the choice. Keep living inside the illusion that you see it all, or accept that you don't and start building a strategy to cover what you can't see. One path leads to stagnation and costly mistakes. The other leads to growth and power built on truth, the quicks, and doesn't care if you believe in it. It doesn't care if you think the road is clear. It's there regardless, waiting. Your only defense is awareness. The awareness that says, I know I don't see it all. I know I need others. I know my certainty is my enemy. That mindset will save you. That mindset will keep you moving when others are stuck, sinking into problems they never saw coming. Blind spots are invisible until they aren't. They stay hidden until the exact moment they swallow you whole. The only way to win is to unmask them before they drag you under, and that means stepping out of your own head, inviting the challenge, and building systems that force reality into view. Do that and the quicks, and loses its power. Ignore it, and sooner or later it will take you down radical open. Mindedness is your superpower. Most people don't understand this. They think strength comes from being certain, from sticking to their guns, from holding on tightly to their own opinions. But certainty is often just a cage. It feels solid, but it traps you. The real power comes when you're willing to drop the need to be right and instead chase what's true. Open-mindedness isn't weakness. It's not about being indecisive or easily swayed. It's about having the courage to look beyond your own perspective. It's about realizing that your mind, no matter how sharp, is limited. You can only see a fraction of the picture. Radical open-mindedness is the tool that lets you borrow vision from others, expand your field of awareness, and uncover truths you would never reach alone. Think about the most successful people you've ever studied. They're not the ones who always knew the answers. They're the ones who asked better questions. They sought out people who disagreed with them. They tested their ideas, challenged their own assumptions, and weren't afraid to admit when they were wrong. That's not weakness, that's strength, because it takes far more courage to let go of a belief than to cling to one. Your ego will resist this. It wants you to believe you're already right. It wants you to defend your positions, your decisions, your identity. But every time you dig in and refuse to listen, you close the door on growth. Radical open-mindedness is about ripping that door wide open. It's about saying, I might be missing something. Show me, teach me, challenge me. Those words are powerful because they create the space for transformation. Imagine two people in a room. One insists they're always right. The other says, I want to learn what I don't know. Which one do you think evolves faster? Which one adapts when circumstances change? Which one spots opportunities others miss? It's obvious. The one who is open wins. The one who clings to certainty eventually falls behind. Radical open-mindedness also accelerates decision making. Most people think it slows things down, but the opposite is true. When you open yourself to diverse perspectives early, you uncover flaws before they become disasters. You see risks before they turn into crises. You discover better solutions before you commit resources. That speed of learning gives you a competitive edge. It saves you years of trial and error. But don't confuse open-mindedness with blind acceptance. It's not about believing everything you hear. It's about listening deeply, considering fully, and then testing against reality. It's about holding your beliefs lightly and being willing to upgrade them when better evidence comes along. This is how you build strength that lasts, because it's grounded in truth, not stubbornness. The reason radical open-mindedness is so rare is because it requires vulnerability. It forces you to admit you don't know it all. That's uncomfortable. It feels risky, but here's the paradox. The very thing that feels like weakness becomes your greatest strength, because once you stop pretending you know it all, you unlock access to knowledge, wisdom, and strategies far beyond your own reach. In practice, it looks like this. You seek out people who are smarter than you in specific areas. You invite them to critique your thinking. You don't just tolerate their disagreement, you embrace it. You create environments where truth can surface, even if it's messy, even if it hurts. And when the truth shows up, you align with it immediately, even if it means admitting you were wrong. That's what separates the good from the great. Radical open-mindedness isn't just a tactic, it's a way of life. It transforms the way you make decisions, the way you lead, the way you grow. It keeps you from stagnating in outdated beliefs. It turns every interaction into an opportunity to see more clearly. And it builds resilience because no matter how fast the world changes, you're always learning, always adapting, always evolving. The people who resist this will call it soft. They'll say it's naive. But watch what happens over time. Their rigid certainty will crack under the weight of reality. Meanwhile, the open-minded will keep compounding wisdom, building systems, and staying ahead. That's the difference between fragility and strength. The truth is, the world doesn't reward you for being right. It rewards you for aligning with reality, and reality doesn't care about your opinions. Radical open-mindedness is the only superpower that consistently pulls you closer to reality, faster than ego, faster than pride, faster than fear. And once you master it, nothing can hold you back for long. Design your higher self. That's the work that separates those who drift through life from those who build it. Most people walk around reacting, hoping, surviving. They let circumstances dictate who they become. But the truth is, you have the power to design yourself deliberately, like an architect creating a structure, like an engineer building a machine. You don't just stumble into your best self. You build it. Think of yourself as two versions, the one who operates day to day and the one who designs the system that operator lives inside. Most people never step into the role of designer. They get lost in tasks, routines, impulses. But the higher version of you, the designer, steps back. That version asks, who do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to create? What habits, systems, and environments will get me there? The moment you step into that mindset, you're no longer just living, you're designing. Designing your higher self starts with clarity. You have to define the person you want to become, not just in vague terms like successful or happy, but with precision. How does that person think? How do they act under pressure? How do they treat others? What choices do they make when no one is watching? You sketch that blueprint, and then, piece by piece, you begin to live into it. But here's where most people fail. They rely on willpower. They think they can simply force themselves to act differently. That doesn't work long term. Willpower is weak when stacked against emotions, impulses, and habits that have been reinforced for years. The real power comes from building systems. If your higher self is disciplined, design an environment that makes discipline automatic. If your higher self is calm, design routines that cultivate peace before chaos hits. If your higher self is a learner, surround yourself with information and people who stretch you daily. Systems beat willpower every single time, and this is where it gets powerful. You don't just design habits, you design feedback. You compare the results you're getting with the results you want. If they don't align, you don't get defensive. You don't blame luck. You analyze the machine. Where did it break down? Where can it be adjusted? That's how an engineer thinks. That's how you treat yourself, not as a finished product, but as a system under constant design and improvement. The higher self you design also knows how to rise above ego. It doesn't get lost in pride or defensiveness. It doesn't cling to being right. It cares about truth. It cares about results. That's why designing your higher self requires humility. You have to be willing to see where you're falling short. You have to be willing to accept feedback, even when it stings, because that's the raw material you use to refine the design. Another piece of the design is choosing your influences. You can't become your higher self while surrounded by people who keep you stuck in your lower patterns. You have to intentionally design your circle, fill it with those who challenge you, inspire you, and embody the qualities you're building. Your higher self thrives in environments where growth is the standard, not the exception. Understand this. Your higher self isn't some distant dream. It's not a version of you that only exists years down the line. It's available right now, in the next decision you make, in the next thought you entertain, in the next habit you reinforce. Every small choice is a brick in the structure. Over time, those bricks become walls, those walls become rooms, and soon you're living inside the house you designed. The real danger is default living. If you don't design your higher self, the lower self takes over. The reactive self, the impulsive self, the fearful self. That version will run the show by default. and if you let that happen long enough, it becomes your identity. That's why design is non-negotiable. You either shape yourself, or the world shapes you. The good news is, you don't have to be perfect to begin. You don't have to wait for the right time, the right resources, the right conditions. You start with the blueprint in your mind and the discipline to build one piece at a time. Every day is a chance to step into the designer's role. Every day is a chance to upgrade the operating system. Designing your higher self is the ultimate leverage, because once you create a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more disciplined than your current self, everything else in life bends to that. Goals, success, relationships, wealth. They all flow more naturally when you've engineered the person capable of handling them. The process isn't easy, but it's worth it. Because when you look back, you won't just see a life that happened to you. You'll see a life you designed, and a self you built with intention. Here's what matters. Success doesn't come from avoiding your own faults. It comes from confronting them, dismantling them, and replacing them with a smarter system. That's your system. So choose, stay stuck in your echo chamber, or break through, dismantle your ego, expose your blind spots, engineer the CO version of yourself, and then go build everything you've ever imagined, because the only true barriers are the ones you refuse to see. ****